Hi, it's Dennis Daly. I've posted over 100 excerpts from some of my more than 250 American montage shows that I did in the 1980s and 90s while at UPI Radio. Recently, I embarked on a fresh series of shows, and here's the second half of one of my new American montage interviews. This week, we're talking about the world of nuns as seen through the eyes of one of the orders headquartered in the Midwest, and that is the Sisters of Providence. Now, if you didn't go to Catholic schools and you haven't had much of a chance to meet or associate with nuns, the whole idea of being a nun may seem very, very foreign to you. The Sisters of Providence, headquartered in St. Mary of the Woods, Indiana, was the order that sent the nuns to the grade school and high school I attended in southern Indiana. So I grew up thinking, well, nuns are normal. And if you don't feel that way, you just haven't talked to a nun very long. We had been talking to Sister Marie Kevin, who did an awful lot of work to make sure that the founder of the order, Mother Theodore, was eventually recognized a saint. That was her last major assignment, Sister Marie Kevin. But now we have joining us from the headquarters in the Midwest, Sister Denise Wilkinson, who's the head of the Sisters of Providence. And Sister, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. I know you got to hear the first half of this week's show when I was talking to Sister Marie Kevin. You know, every time I've had a discussion about nuns with people, that whole idea comes up that nuns just beat the holy heck out of you. They break your knuckles with rulers. I didn't have that experience at all. I always thought your order of nuns were very nurturing and kind. Disciplinarians, yes, but not physically that way. They would look at me and say, Dennis, don't do that. Do you get tired of people, whenever the topic of nuns comes up, that they think of you as being tyrants?
Dennis, I am always mystified by the stereotype of sisters bearing rulers, because I'm like you, I went all through Catholic school, never met it in my whole life. It warmed my heart when you said that you experienced the Sisters of Providence as being nurturing, because that's certainly how I knew them in my own experience, how I knew us.
Sister Denise, you're a native of Chicago. You went to St. Mary of the Woods for your college training, and now you are the big chief there. You're the general superior. Do you think that the members of your order understand how your fellow students feel about you in such a positive way? And almost everyone I know who went through schools where your franchise of nuns taught, I think, look at you that way. Are you aware of the positive image the Sisters of Providence has?
Do we know it? I don't know that we know it. I think one thing that's important in us knowing it is what you asked Marie Kevin. What's it like to be a former teacher and have former students come back and visit you? I think the sisters, like most people, aren't in their lives for what the return is that will come back to us, but are simply following our lives, trying to be good people and loving people. But it sure is nice to get the affirmation that it worked or that it was working. Dennis, can I tell you a beautiful story that I just heard?
Absolutely. We've got a lot of minutes left.
One of our sisters who's now 96, Marcelin, Sister Marcelin, has been in contact with a woman that she taught in 1943 in third grade. And they have kept in contact over all these years. And this woman, this former student of Sister Marcelin's, just had a very serious stroke. And the woman's daughter didn't know who else to call. She wanted someone to pray for her mother. And the daughter remembered that her mom had been in contact with the Sister of Providence for years and years. So she found the number for Sister Marcelin and called Marcelin to tell her about her mom's condition, and then ask for prayers of Marcelin and all of the sisters. So I know the stereotype is out there, but my experience is just so different. And stories like that, or you calling Michaela, I just think it puts the lie to the stereotype.
And in case You missed it earlier. Sister Michaela Galvin was my senior homeroom teacher, and it's always fun to stay in touch with her. And I wish we could have had her here on the show, but she didn't want to be interviewed. I can safely say, and I mean this in all honesty, that a lot of my personality and my success over the years, a lot of that stems from my years in Catholic schools with the Sisters of Providence and the priests and the teachers we had back in Indiana. And I'm sure you had what amounts to a mission statement that everybody looked at and marched in time with, even before they were called mission statements.
Well, and you asked about the mission statement. Our mission statement is to promote the loving designs of God in service of in works of love, mercy, and justice and service among God's people. And I think in terms of the arts or music, we got that right from Mother Theodore. She came, as you know, from France, landed in New York, took her overland trip here to Indiana. And one of the things that she was always so surprised about was how much the Americans, as she called us, loved music. And came to know very soon that, as she said, no piano, no pupils. And that has just followed us for years and years. And I think, again, it's that commitment to the whole person, the bringing out of a person's spiritual life, a person's spiritual side that, of course, art and music do so well.
Well, you can talk about music and the arts and English and that kind of thing. I think a lot of people would be surprised, not only when we talk about the Sisters of Providence, but nuns in general, how many of them are sports fans. And I guess legendary among them in the Sisters of Providence was Sister Mary Pius, who had this affinity for grade school students, particularly young boys playing baseball, and used that as a way to further their education.
Well, I can only affirm that what you say is true. It's still true. Our sisters up at Guerin College Prep, Providence Cristo Rey, I think it's maybe part of our American culture as well. I suppose for our younger members, Title IX didn't hurt any either, now that women are participating more in sports. But, Dennis, it's funny that you should say it, because a man from Terre Haute just called me today and said he had 4 tickets. He knew I could find 4 sisters who would like to use them. So evidently the reputation is far-reaching.
Sister Denise, earlier we were talking at length to Sister Marie Kevin about the work that had to be done to get your founder, Mother Theodore Guerin, recognized as a saint. In about what era did Mother Theodore die? How long ago was that?
She died in 1856.
And I think her life is an excellent example of the impact one person can have on subsequent generations.
Oh, yes. I think a gift that she left us, Dennis, and you'll appreciate this, I think, she was a writer. So I think we feel that we know her from her journals, her letters, the writings that she left. And what's apparent in her journals and letters is how human she was. She loved deeply. She had deep feelings, which she expressed freely. She had high expectations of other people and of herself. And she had the most wonderful capacity to love a person just as he or she was. And because she left that evidence in her writings, I think we feel very close to her.
I may have this story all messed up, but I remember from my childhood one of the members of your order recounting how once a year there was a special day to honor your founder and to read from the history about those early nuns. And it would give the nun's name and then say alias and give the woman's original name. And I remember that the young girl who had just come to the convent was saying, let's say, Sister St. Benedict Elias Jane Doe instead of alias, and all the nuns had a hard time to keep from laughing.
We used to have the reader stand. If you come and visit, we'll show you. And if you were the novice reading or the young professed reading, there was a senior sister who was noting down every word you mispronounced.
Years ago, when there were more nuns in all the orders, there were separate convent buildings in towns, usually close by the priest's house, the church, the high school. In my hometown, there was this beautiful building, and I can remember wanting to go in there because it was so peaceful, and there was dark wood and mahogany, and just it had a strong feel about it, and it even had an interesting smell.
Murphy's oil soap, probably.
And I guess because it was a household of nuns, each convent had someone in charge.
Each convent had a superior, yes.
Now, was that person appointed or elected?
No, she was appointed.
So that nun then, that appointed leader, was the administrator, if you will, handling the affairs of that particular local convent.
That's right. It would be her duty, her job to care for the sisters, make sure that whatever the order of the day was followed.
And something that I was not aware of when I was in Catholic schools is how the nuns really donated their labor, if you will. You got, I guess, room and board and medical and a little stipend, but it was a pretty Spartan existence.
We were compensated very poorly. And, for instance, our congregation then bought into Social Security, Kevin, like in the 70s, I think, you know. But, again, you were right. You received your room and board. And that's why convents love to have a music teacher, because the income that the music teacher brought in supplemented what the sisters earned, which was very little, yeah.
Sister Denise, doing this interview, my mind is going back to my time in grade school and high school, and like a lot of people, I took piano lessons, and the piano lessons were in the music room, the piano room of the convent, which was a big U-shaped 4-story building with a little walkway down the center of that U, and the music room was right at the end of it. And I remember liking to go in there because it seemed so friendly and so warm, and even though I didn't particularly like taking piano lessons, I liked going into that music room.
Was that due to the sister herself, Dennis?
Oh, I think that probably had something to do with it. In retrospect, I can't think of a music or a choral teacher I had whom I didn't like. But it was also well lit, and a lot of sunlight came in there. And as I say, I really didn't like taking piano lessons, except when I got older and started in music and singing. The fact that I could read sheet music was a genuine asset. I guess at the time, taking piano lessons just seemed like the right thing to do.
Ah, okay.
And I can't help but think that so many of those nuns and teachers in general in public school who are into music, for example, Walt Anslinger, our band director, I'm sure worked very long hours for very low pay, but I think there's something in the psyche of a teacher who is into music and the arts that becomes infectious. I mean, it rubs off on you.
Well, and I think that would make sense, too, because again, I think the sisters were so dedicated to, or so interested in their students and bringing out the best of each student. And I'm sure, Kevin is dying to talk here, Dennis. She always says she has just one thing, but I don't know how to move the microphone.
Okay, go ahead and move the microphone back over to Sister Marie Kevin. Sister, what 2 cents or 5 cents or a dime do you want to add here?
I just wanted to say, when you mentioned the sisters loving sports, when I told my parents as a freshman in high school that I thought I wanted to become a sister, the first words out of my father's mouth were, "But you're too young." Yeah. The first words out of my mother's mouth were, "But you like to play basketball."
What a wonderful anecdote. Pass the mic back over to your boss there, Sister Denise. Sister, as we wrap things up here, a few final questions. If you look at the long history of the Sisters of Providence, I think the history is fairly representative of most types of nuns, most sisterhoods of nuns in this country. How has the decline affected you? At the heyday, how many nuns were there wearing the habit of the Sisters of Providence, and how does that compare to today?
I would think 1,400 at our heyday. We were 1,400 members. Right now, Dennis, we are 364 women, and our median age is 78. So that would give you an idea. I would take issue with your use of the word heyday, though. I understand in terms of numbers and I understand in terms of visibility that it is very easy to think that that was the golden age of the sisters. And I think it isn't how we feel about it or think about it right now. I think we believe that religious life for women has been around in the church since the earliest centuries, and that God has called women to do for the church and in the church what the needs of the church and the needs of the day are. And I think we feel that we're in a kind of a period of reorganization, you might say, or refounding, really, yes.
And Sister, even though the numbers are much smaller than they used to be, we have to realize that the church, the Catholic Church, is shrinking. So are many Protestant denominations. We are seeing a consolidation of parishes. There are far fewer priests than they used to. I would think that the educated and spiritual women of the religious orders of nuns are playing a bigger part now in parishes, because in many ways, with the shortage of priests in some areas, they have to take up the slack.
I think so, very much so. And I think, for instance, here in Terre Haute, there are so many of our sisters well into their 70s who are active in so many aspects of social service. Providence Pantry, providing food on a weekly basis to families who are in need. St. Anne's Clinic here, which is a wonderful organization of volunteer doctors, nurses, volunteer technicians to take care of the uninsured. So I think we very much feel that we're still about the works of the gospel, that we have a lot of vitality and a lot of hope.
Sister Denise, can you look into a crystal ball there at St. Mary of the Woods, Indiana, and look at the future to see what the future of nuns in general is going to be and the future of the Sisters of Providence? You have young women who are coming in to devote their lives to being a nun and helping others, but those numbers pale by comparison to decades ago. What runs through your mind when you look toward the future?
We don't know what God intends for the future of religious life, but I think we want to be ready for it. We also, Sisters of Providence, have 10 women in the initial stages of preparation, temporary vows, and 2 novices.
Well, and I guess we can talk about the glory days till we're blue in the face, and I can reminisce all I want about my grade school and high school years and the teachers, but as far as the future of nuns goes, the door is still open to new people coming in. The door is still open.
The door is still open, right.
Sister, I'm sure there have been some people listening who just can't figure out what we're talking about here because they didn't go through Catholic schools. I was told that priests, for example, who are assigned to a diocese, get their training in the local area, and their boss, if you will, is the local bishop, where nuns, more or less, have an order that is franchised, if you will, by the Vatican. So they have a more direct line back to Rome. How did Mother Theodore, for example, contact the Vatican, or I'm really gray on the process. How do you start a group of nuns? How do you start an order?
Well, she came from a Catholic order in France. They were already established, and the Bishop of Indiana came to Rouillé, where the Sisters of Providence were founded, and asked for Sisters of Providence to come to Indiana. So you're correct, at that time, it was the bishop who invited. But I don't think most, in fact, I'm trying to think what you might be thinking of.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to put in perspective how orders of nuns get started. I mean, does some very religious woman call up the Vatican and say, I want to have a franchise, if you will, as somebody who wants to start a McDonald's? I'm sure there's a big difference there, though.
A community of women, an apostolic community of women like ourselves, has a president or a general superior, and in these days our decisions are made much more collaboratively and much more together, not a handed down from on high model. But we are, for instance, called a papal community, which means that the local bishop doesn't have authority over us. And that was kind of Mother Theodore's problem, was that the local bishop was interfering in the life of the community and trying to say who could be accepted and who couldn't, and where they would live and where they wouldn't. And from that history, papal institutes started, so that I wouldn't say we answered directly to Rome.
I hope this isn't an odd question, but is it an oversimplification to draw a parallel between monks and nuns?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, I won't do it again.
Okay, yeah.
Sister, as head of your order here, I'm going to let you wrap up by putting in a good word. You can be a saleswoman if you wish, not necessarily for the Sisters of Providence, but any order of nun. What should a young girl do under the influence of the secular society, bombarded with Hollywood images, who feels in her heart, though, that she wants to really give more of herself and possibly think about becoming a nun in an era when that's increasingly less popular? What path should she take to investigate those possibilities?
Well, I would say what Jesus said, come and see. And we have all kinds of programs for that, Dennis. Come and see. Come and spend some time with us. Give it a chance. Let yourself experience who we are and what we do, and let yourself make up your mind. And Dennis, since you're a communication fellow, most of our inquiries come online. That's our first contact with many, many women now. Whereas Marie Kevin and I, it would have been a Sister of Providence. But now it's good old internet.
Sister Denise Wilkinson, the head of the Sisters of Providence, and before that, Sister Marie Kevin, who has done so much work behind the scenes there. I want to thank you for taking an hour to talk to us right here, and I really appreciate how dedicated you ladies are.
Well, we hope we are dedicated. We believe we are dedicated, and the wonderful thing about life today is we know we're in wonderful partnership with so many other persons who are dedicated as well.
Sister Denise, and before that, Sister Marie Kevin, thanks.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this interview from my new American Montage series. Check out YouTube for more. I'm Dennis Daly.